Hi, thanks so much for being here. I'm recording this in early May, primarily because over the past several weeks, I have been involved in so many webinars, as I'm sure you have too. But for many of these, I've been able to present. I've worked with Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles Magazine and America's Mart and ADAC, talking with a lot of interior designers as well as folks in retail and gifts, talking about branding and customer experience. And what's happened is the same questions have come up over and over and over. And so I thought I'd create a little mini webinar or mini workshop that's just available on my website. That's almost like a highlight reel of the things that I keep hearing and the things that people seem to be interested in the most. It's also a way for you to see sort of my philosophies and what it's like to work with me. What's so interesting is that the things that I talk about and the things that I work with my clients on, they're things that I think are evergreen. They're not going to change. I talk a lot about having, your clients trusting you and how you can create that trust and authenticity and honesty in your marketing and in your sales process, and how you create customer experiences or client experiences that create an emotional connection. So in the next 25 minutes or so, I'm hoping to just give you a few of my thoughts and hopefully some tactics that you can take and apply to your own businesses. I'm doing this on Zoom. So typically if I'm creating a course or something like that, it'll be in a different program where it's all kind of polished and a little more perfect and I get to edit, but I'm just gonna do it raw and real because that's sort of where the world is right now. And I know if I wait to perfect and polish, then it'll be another, I don't know, several weeks before it gets up. So let me share my screen with you. See, normally I have people who are live on the other end and they are able to tell me what they can see, but we're just going to go with it and hope this is working. So what we're going to talk about over the next 20 minutes or so is brand clarity, which leads to brand confidence, I promise. Brand consistency and client communication, such a hot topic right now. What the client experience should be. This probably is my favorite thing to discuss, but it's hard to talk about client experience without talking about brand clarity. So I decided to bring those two together. And then since we aren't live, we won't do Q&A, but I'll review it a little bit and hopefully give you some tactics that you can take back to your own desk and to your own teams and work through. So one of the things I like to do is ask these three questions, and this is going to frame our next 20 minutes. What is your why? Who is your who? And where are your whispered wows? You probably kind of get the first two. Whispered wows, what that means to me is all of the little, those are the client experiences. They're not the firework wows. They're not the huge event, the big reveals, the marvelous openings or installs. They're the little tiny moments that happen over and over and over again that your customers just are like, it's like little baby ahas. And I think we really need to create the whispered wows. So before we get into all these questions, let's lay sort of a branding foundation. You can look at branding 6,000 different ways. I have chosen to go with the 4 C's of branding just because it's a framework that seems to work for me and it makes sense to a lot of my clients. It could be the 4 W's or the 4 M's or the 4 D's. I'm sure you can make it work with anything. But I like to look at brand clarity, communication, consistency, and conversation. Brand clarity is really your foundation. You've got to have this. Seriously, if you don't figure this out, anything you do, creating a logo, a new website, a new service, nothing will be as strong as it could be if you had the brand clarity. So please do this. It's how your brand walks and talks. It's your brand personality, your brand values. Your clients and your customers are a part of defining your brand clarity. It's what makes you different. Communication is all of the content you put out there, what you say, where you say it, how you say it, why you say it. Consistency, we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes, is all of the touch points that you have with your clients and the conversation. We all want that. We want people talking about us, both word of mouth to each other, as well as on social media. So back to the three questions. What is your why? When you really get down to it and understand your why, not only does it help your prospective customers understand you, but it helps you. We are all entrepreneurs, and we all have days, maybe every day, where we just go, oh, why am I doing this? Is this really worth it? This helps you figure out your purpose and your vision. It's almost like just something you can go back to. It's your compass. Something I've created for anyone who's on my website is a workbook called The 4 C's of Branding. And this is on that brand clarity. What I said is your brand foundation. If you go to the top of my website, there's a blue bar and you can click on that and you can download this workbook. It's about 14 pages and it's a DIY. It's the same thing that I do with my clients when we work together, but it's totally something you can do on your own. And I promise, if you just go through this entire thing, it will give you so much clarity on your brand clarity. And there's some other places you can find it. I have a blog post that talks about this. Will give you a little more information. And soon I will have a resources section in my nav bar. So if that resources section is there when you're watching this, then you can click there and also find this workbook. It's free. So this is sort of what it covers. And I'm going to spend 10 seconds on each of these sections because, I mean, honestly, when I work with people, with my clients one-to-one, this takes us weeks. But it'll really give you some ahas. Your service, the problem you're solving, who you're solving it for, and how it changes their lives. The client that you want to work with, who is she? What does she care about? Where has she gone to try to find the answers that you're giving her? Why hasn't it worked in the past? What do you value the most? What are your brand values? Because where your brand values meet her personal values, that's where all the magic happens. And what makes you different? That is so important. When it talks a little bit here about looking at your competitors, but you're not comparing yourself. You're not better than someone else. And someone who's been doing this for 20 years or someone who does these huge jobs, they're not better. And you're not better than anyone else. You're different. The difference is what matters. And you have to, when you figure out the difference, then people can start to understand you and tell your stories, and you can tell your own stories. And finally, brand personality and voice. Brand personality is very similar to a person's personality, how you describe the adjectives that you use. And this helps you figure out the way that you talk, especially in your copy on your website and in social media. So this is an example of one of the pages in the books. I will look at this, point at this very first question. How do you solve your customer's problem? A lot of people tell me they have a hard time with the word problem. Like, well, it's not really a problem that her dining room needs, a redo. No, it's not a problem, but maybe it's a frustration. Maybe it's an irritation. Maybe it's a hope. Maybe it's a dream. So when you're going through this workbook or you're talking about this with your team, maybe you take the word problem and substitute frustration, irritation, hope, dream. One of the things I love to say is that I think that brand clarity always leads to brand confidence. And it's because once you define something, like if you ever figure out your own style, once you figure out your own style, you're more confident. It's because you're not trying to be everything. You're being you. And so this is just some of the things that I think happen when you figure out brand clarity. You know what to say in your copy. It's easier to make decisions. And this, you discover more opportunities. Once you're defined and people can understand what you are, people who want to collaborate with you and ask you to sponsor things or want to sponsor you, they find you because you've said, here's who I am. Your better able to communicate your value. And I love this. I mean, one of the things that can hurt small businesses is when your team is not on brand. And if you can define that brand, then it's easier for your team to understand what does work and what doesn't, and how they talk and how they don't, and what they say on social media and what they don't. And you're more confident in your business. So that was, what is your why? The next thing is, who is your who? And I know this isn't grammatically correct, but it's okay. It's sort of Dr. Seuss-ish. Your client is as much a part of your brand as anything else. And we have to all accept this. So one of the most important things, I think, is to understand what your client values. Like I said earlier on one of the earlier slides, where is she going to find the answers that she's looking for? Because you want her to come to you. So you need to know what she's going through right now. When she does come to you, if she comes into your store, if she goes to your website, what is that experience like? What's going on in her head? There's it's been going on for years, talking about the ideal, client avatar, or the ICA, or, who is your ideal client? And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think we can sometimes get too worked up in it. I find, though, that if I do say, okay, this is the perfect person to hire me, this is who I really want to work with, and I name her and I say, okay, her name is Lisa and she's 43 and she lives in Westchester, and this is her second marriage, and she has, 2 kids and 2 stepkids, and this is where she goes to church, and this is the magazine she reads, and these are the podcasts she listens to. Then when I write copy, I'm able to talk to her. And that is one of the best ways to be authentic in your messaging. Okay, so anyway, who is your who? How do you figure that out? A couple of ideas. I mentioned a minute ago the resources section on my website. Every workbook I've written is in there. And I did write one on how to better understand your customers. And it walks you through and gives you examples of all of these things. Watching your customers. Watching them when they walk into your store or into your restaurant. Like I said, I work with so many designers. When they walk into your showroom, have one of your interns or someone that your customers don't know, watch them. And do they get confused? What do they look at first? Where do they go? Is that where you want them to go? And okay, that's interesting, because when you have to decide where you want them to go and you have to lead them, we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we get into, we talk about your website. Walk in their shoes. Is it hard to find you? Physically find you? When they're on your website, what happens when they click on this, when they click on that? Read your reviews. I know you all, well, I hope you all read your reviews, but look for the patterns in your reviews. Print them all out. Your Google reviews, emails that people have sent you. If you have reviews on Facebook, print them all out and look for the patterns, the negatives and the positives, and pay attention to those. Engaging on social media is more than a heart emoji. Start having conversations. I promise you, it makes all the difference. And speaking of conversations, have a real conversation. It is vulnerable and it is scary, but getting on the phone or on a Zoom call, or when we can do it again, meeting for coffee and asking clients what they love and what they don't. I mean, I have a few favorite stores here in Atlanta, and I just thought about this. I wonder if they ever asked me to say, Kimberly, what do you love about coming into our store? And what is, you don't? I'd be honored that they would ask my opinion. Or what's it like when you go to my website? I do a website audit as your customer. So what the experience is when I'm on your website. And finally, listen. I used to do a lot of work with designer show houses here in Atlanta. And sometimes no one knew who I was. I was always behind the scenes. And so sometimes I would go into the show house when we had all these guests, and I just wander around and listen to them and listen to what they would say. And I'd hear, oh, it's great that they did this way. Oh, I wish they had this. I wish they had paint colors listed in every room. Oh, I don't like having to go this direction to get to the basement. You can learn so much. Just these 6 things, you can learn so much about your customers, and it will change your operations and the way you do business. So client communication is such a big, it should be a big deal all the time, but I know it's being discussed more and more right now. What should we say? What can we not say? I'm going to give you a few best practices in just a second, but just make sure when you're looking at client communication, you're looking at your website and everything that you do online. You're looking at the way, even old-fashioned talking on the phone, the way you answer your phone, the way your team members talk on the phone, what you post on social media. You're looking at the way you email, you're sending handwritten notes. And this last icon is kind of, it doesn't completely fit, but the way you're communicating with your internal clients, or constituents might be a better word, your team members. If we're still, in social distancing and shelter in place while you're watching this, how are you helping them while they are trying to learn more about the brand? Do your vendors, do they understand the brand? Are they living the brand? So make sure we don't look at our clients and our customers just as the people who purchase things and buy things from us, but it's all of our constituents. I think it's so important, and it really can lead to a stronger brand. So just a few communication tips, and these, again, these are evergreen. These are all the time. Honesty and authenticity win, always. It's nothing new, but just that's a filter that you can apply and say, wow, am I really, is this real? Am I being me? I think a great thing to do is create a swipe file, and this could be like a folder file if you like to print things out, or you can just do a folder in your email. And when you see things, email subject lines or captions, this is not a copy, this is an inspirational file where you're like, oh, when I saw that, I wanted to open it. Oh, this mattered to me. It'll just give you inspiration and little brain jolts for the future. I think it's really important that anytime you're writing content, if you're writing a blog post, an email, and this is more for your written communication, not when you're on a Zoom call or talking on the phone. Think about, does it entertain? Does it educate? Does it inspire? If it does something else, please let me know. I may miss one, but this is sort of like this is sort of the blogging 101. Make sure your blogs always entertain, educate, or inspire. And tell your story. I mean, how is different to work with you? Don't forget to think about that as you're communicating, because that is, like I said earlier, that's one of the most important things you can do is explain how different it is to work with you and how you solve the problem differently. And the reason I put I versus we is I just get this question constantly. Kimberly, I'm a one-person shop. Should I say we so I sound bigger? No. Let's go back to, look over there to your left. The honesty and authenticity win. Be real. Be you. Don't try to sound like something you aren't. The person that you want to work with, that ideal client who wants to work with you, they're going to love the fact that they get you. If you have 15 contractors and they all touch the customer experience and they work on the job, well, then you can say we, just be real. Just take it back to authenticity and honesty. So I'm going to say one quick thing. One of the best compliments I ever got is a friend of mine who I know very, very well. When she first started reading my blog and getting my newsletter, she said, Kimberly, when I read this, sometimes I can't figure out if like this is an email to me or if it's like a group email because it sounds just like you. That's the best compliment ever. Brand clarity, and it'll make it easier, I promise. So a couple of ideas on social media communications. I know, especially for designers, you may have jobs going on, but you're not there, perhaps able to photograph them. I love a beautiful Instagram feed. It's really important to me to follow beautiful feeds. But I also think for Instagram or any social media to really work, to bring in clients, We have to show ourselves, and we have to make an emotional connection. And these are just a few ideas of things that you can do, perhaps while you don't have jobs going on that you're constantly photographing. Some behind the scenes. And behind the scenes doesn't just mean an install. It could be you getting ready to watch a Zoom webinar, and maybe that doesn't fit on your feed, but it's part of one of your stories. Remind your clients of how you help them. You don't just renovate the kitchen. You make it easier to prepare Thanksgiving dinner. People love to, especially when you're creative, people love to hear what or who or where inspires you. It could be when you're taking a walk, or when you're shopping, you're in a showroom, you're reading a magazine. Because designers and people who own beautiful stores, anyone who creates beautiful things, that can be intimidating to other people. I know, sounds a little crazy, but it really can be. So to see that behind the scenes and what inspires you will inspire them. Encouragement and inspiration is a little bit different than number 3, because I think sometimes, okay, I know not everyone is a big believer in quotes. I got to tell you, one of my best, I love doing quotes because I like to read them. And I think you can put quotes on your feed that are extremely branded. But I follow Beth Webb on, who's an interior designer here in Atlanta, and I follow her on Instagram. And she often puts beautiful, beautiful spaces and then puts a quote in her caption. And that evokes so much emotion. It's brilliantly done. So you should follow her. Yeah, she doesn't know I'm saying that. Things about you. This is back to telling your stories, and things that you can teach. And you have a lot that you can teach. And we're also visual. So if you're teaching something, you're like, well, Kimberly, that would look very good on my feed. Find a visual where you can use the portrait setting on your phone and take a picture that the visual is beautiful, and then in the caption you teach it. Okay, so I'm gonna talk just a minute about email marketing. I'm a huge fan of email marketing. Well, I don't always love doing it, but I think all designers need to be doing email marketing. I just updated a blog post I wrote a couple of months ago, but I've updated it since the last couple of months. So you can find that over on my blog. Here's why I think it's so important. Email marketing keeps you in your client's minds. So let's say you've already worked with them. So the job's over, they've paid you. You're still giving them value. It strengthens your brand. You own the list. That's yours. Facebook isn't yours. Instagram isn't yours. It could disappear at any minute. When you email consistently, it's not like someone says, oh, wow, I get an email from her every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I trust her. No. It's just something that goes in their mind like, oh, there she is. Oh, she does what she says she's going to do. No one thinks it through that way, but that's what you feel. And it's funny, but when you have to create email workflows, which I'll talk about in a second, you really have to think about the process and how you're going to automate this. And it actually helps you with your clarity. This is not a commercial, but I'm just going to tell you my favorite email service provider right now is Flowdesk. They're pretty new. They're in beta. But what I love about it is the aesthetics are just amazing. They've created these templates that are beautiful. And I think for the clients that I work with, the industries I work with, aesthetics are so important. You don't have to do it through me. I just don't pay the $38 a month. If you go through an affiliate, it's $19 a month forever, no matter how many subscribers you have. And even if you sign up through like a link, for an affiliate link, you still get the first 30 days free. And then you don't even have to give a credit card. It's amazing. So I have a blog post on this too, which you can go check out. It was that same one about designers needing to have an email list. And if you click on the link, then you get that rate. And I also am creating a course that's going to come out soon. But I just think it's so important. But I just get pushback all the time like, oh, Kimberly, no one wants to read newsletters. I don't read newsletters. Why would I spend my time on this? I don't know what to say. No one wants to hear from me. So in this blog post, I have a few ideas. You could say, if you live in, where I shop when I'm in Charlotte, where I shop when I'm in Nashville, how to style a bookcase, a coffee table, a bed, where to find the perfect hardware for this, where to find the right light bulbs that don't take forever to turn on, things that inspire you, podcasts. But I mean, there's so many. This industry has so many things that you can talk about. The perfect gift for graduation, the perfect gift for Mother's Day, the perfect gift for Father's Day. Right now, how you're reopening. That's a big message right now. If you are bricks and mortar or people come to your firm, how you're reopening is a big message. Do not copy and paste. You're going to find a lot of people, a lot of branding, marketing people saying, here's a template on what to say. Okay, maybe put it in your swipe file that we talked about earlier so you see the sort of talk about point A, B, C, but do not copy this. Make it honest, make it about you. I know I'm going fast, but you can go back and hit pause. I talk quickly about brand consistency. It's so important that you have brand consistency. This is what makes you make sense in your client's mind. This is what builds trust. It helps clients remember you. So I know everyone thinks about the colors and their fonts and their logo. Critical. It's so important. But before you do that, before you create this logo and hire someone to create all this, make sure you have the brand clarity work done. Because once that is done, then when you look at your touch points, and your touch points are everything. They're your social media, your website, your store, your headshot, the flowers you leave behind after an install, the gifts you give, the actual things that you sell, the design that you do, or the entryway, the doors that people walk through. It's like the layers in a space. You might have one layer that's a little bit off. Maybe it's not the perfect pillow, not the perfect throw. And if one's off, it's okay. But if several of these are off, it won't work. It's the notes that you send and the stationery that you use and the pen that you use and the emails that you send. And when we are doing parties again, it's what you serve. It's the music that plays, your hold music or the music in your store. A touch point is every interaction a customer or client has with your business. It's so important. When you don't have brand consistency, this is what happens. Your clients can't quite define who you are. Maybe they don't completely not trust you, but I promise you it's not as strong as it could be. They stop connecting the dots in their heads, and that is such a big deal, to connect the dots. For them to say, oh, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense. They may not think that, but when you have brand consistency, that's what happens. And then they can tell your stories. But if you don't have brand consistency, they don't remember you and they move on to something else. So one thing I think is great for you to do is to list 8 touch points. And these are online touch points right now because so many of us are not back out in our offices. And believe me, your clients or customers have at least 8 touch points. When they go to your website, maybe it's an email that you send, maybe it's a discovery call. So list 8 touch points. And just always remember that the strength and the importance of touch points. It will either strengthen your brand or erode it. So important. And finally, where your whispered wows. I already hit 25 minutes, so I'll do this quickly. Like I said in the beginning, this is about making an emotional connection. Your customer experiences don't necessarily happen organically. They've got to be intentional. Sometimes they do, but they need to be intentional. I honestly believe that we as business owners have a responsibility to our customers and our clients to make sure that experience is fantastic. There is so much talent out there. You are so good at what you do, but there are a lot of others who are good at what they do too. The experience that I have with you, even before I meet you, is what's going to make me choose you. And I know it's not saving lives, but what a great thing to do. Because you know when you have like a great experience and you're just in a better mood for the rest of the day, let's create those experiences for our customers and our clients. Every single touch point, every single one. So look back at those 8. And this is what I suggest. You ask yourself 1, 2, or 3 questions. You don't need to always ask all 3. The biggest one that I always say is, how do you want them to feel? When they're on your website, when they walk into your store, when you're doing the presentation, after the install. Every single touch point, how do you want them to feel? If they buy something in your store, and when they take it home and take it out of the bag, how do you want them to feel? What do you want them to say? And the reason I like this is this sort of like takes it out a little bit. So after they had a discovery call with you, what do you want her to say to her husband that night about hiring? Oh, honey, you had this great call with Melissa, and I think she's going to be our designer. And you know, she made me feel like, wow, I get to be a part of this. You know, I feel like it's not going to be like I'll decorate it. No, it's gonna be us. Or, oh, thank goodness, I talked to Samantha, and we are not going to have to be involved. She has got this. She's got a process. She's got it figured out, and I trust her completely. What do you want them to say? How do you want them to feel? Write it down, and then reverse engineer it. And then another question I sometimes like to ask is, what do you want them to do? And especially if they're on your website, or after a meeting, when they're on your website, this makes me crazy. The homepage of so many interior design websites, what do you do next? You can go back up to the nav bar, but what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go to your contact page? Do you want me to set up a call? Do you want me to go to your portfolio? After a discovery call, what do you want them to do? And make sure you're helping them do that. Sure, I would love it for everyone I talk to say, oh, well, I just want to hire Kimberly. I want to hire her to help me with my branding and my customer experience. That's not the way it works. We've got 600,000 thoughts in our brains every day. We have to help our customers figure out what to do next. How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? And what do you want them to say? So a quick recap. Brand clarity, really understand the problem you're solving. Understand that customer well enough that you can actually have a conversation in your head with her and really get to the core of what makes you different. And I believe that this workbook will help you do that. When you're thinking about communication, become your customer, walk in her shoes, figure out your touch points, stay on brand, on brand, on brand, on brand. I will preach that until my last dying day. Think about where your audiences are in their journey. Is this a current client, a future client, a past client? And build that trust. The communication and consistency will help you build trust. And look at the client experience, which is what we just talked about. Make an emotional connection, ask these 3 questions, and then reverse engineer it. You want her to say this? What are you doing to make sure that she says that? You know, what makes you different is the only thing that's going to set you apart and make sure the right clients find you. So think about these things. Think about what is your why, who is your who, and where and what are your whispered wows. Thanks for spending time. I think it was a little bit longer than 25 minutes. If you're not watching this on my website, I thought I would just give you a way to get in touch with me. Any questions you have, since this isn't live, please send me an email, or if you want to send me a DM on Instagram, that's a great way to reach me also. Everyone, please stay safe. Know that you're so good at what you do. You're here. You're working, you're spending time, you're figuring out how to do business in this different world. Be proud of yourself for that. Seriously, stop for a second. Just say, okay, I'm trying to look at things differently. I'm trying to figure out the best way I can do this. Be proud of you. Figure out what makes you different and just celebrate that. Let me know if I can help you at all. Thank you for spending the time, and be safe, be healthy. Thanks.